What's up, everybody? Welcome into Talking SEC. I am your host, Phillip Jordan from Last Word on College Football, 96.9 The Legend in Dothan, Alabama, where I'm the in-studio host and producer. Dothan was football. Talking SEC is back. SEC football season is here starting this weekend. We'll get kicked off on Thursday night when Bowling Green and Tennessee play, and all will be closed up on Monday night when Ole Miss plays Louisville. So we have a fun weekend. Georgia and Clemson's in there, Alabama and Miami, LSU and UCLA. So a lot of fun matchups this weekend in the SEC, and it's just a great time to have that college football is back. Favorite time of the year, best time of the year. You know what I'll say, in every game counts. And I'll give you my prediction for the SEC, the Power 5 conferences, and who will be in the Final Four at the end of the year, at the end of the show. And it's a fun show to kick things off this season. I'll be joined in just a few moments by Adam Spencer. Now, for those of you watching on video, me and Adam, I'll get behind the scenes here a little bit. I'm recording this on Tuesday, August 31st. Me and Adam actually recorded our conversation last Thursday. So for the video watchers, you'll notice a shirt change during that process. And so if you wonder, wow, Phillip changed his shirt. Did he change his shirt for the interview? No, we different timings and look, maybe laziness, but I did not feel like, lining up the shirts and having this going back and putting on the same shirt we had on that night. But anyways, it's a good conversation with Adam. We go about 30 minutes. We will talk about the alliance between the ACC, the Big Ten, and the Pac-12. We will also talk about, Georgia, are they legit title contenders? Alabama, can they be dethroned? We'll talk about some of the new coaches and some surprise teams from both divisions in the from Adam's standpoint. So a lot of good stuff we'll get to on that. And before we jump into that conversation with me and Adam, let you guys know where you can find me in the podcast. You can find me on Twitter at PJordanSEC. The podcast is on Twitter as well at Talking SEC Pod. And of course, the podcast is available on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcast. And remember, you can always email me at sports.philipjordan@gmail.com. Now, let's jump into my conversation with Adam Spencer from Saturday Down South. Everybody joining me on the show this week as we are getting ready. This is the week of SEC football is going to be here this Saturday. Labor Day weekend is coming up this weekend. And joining me to preview the SEC is Adam Spencer from Saturday Down South. And Adam, I appreciate you taking time to come on the show.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we're finally here. Finally of the off season. It's probably been one of the more talkative off seasons we've had in college football for some time. I know week 0. We're recording this before week 0, but week 0 is past us when people are listening or watching this interview. But it's here, and I think we're really happy to get to games instead of having to talk about all the other stuff that's been going around college football these last month or two.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm an Illinois native, so I'll have my eye on that Illinois-Nebraska game, which, we'll already know the outcome of. So how about that big Illini win? Am I right?
There you go. If it happens, man, you may have a future as a fortune teller or something like that, or definitely go to Vegas,
Yeah, exactly.
If that happens.
Yeah, any excuse to go to Vegas. You don't need to tell me twice.
I have actually never been to Vegas.
It's pretty fun. Going on I like to go, around my birthday in March and, pre-COVID times, but, watching some of March Madness and one of the sports books, it's a great experience. So I highly recommend it.
I'm sure that lives up to the name Madness. I'm sure it's pretty crazy in one of the sports books there in the NCAA tournament.
Oh yeah. It's pretty great.
So, obviously, the big storyline, as we record this on a Thursday, and I'm sure we're still going to be talking about it going into the week of the games, the Alliance. And I keep hearing the Alliance. And look, I was a fan of the Alliance of American Football. So every time I hear Alliance, I think, okay, is the Alliance of American Football coming back? But Pac-12, the Big Ten and ACC joining together. But Adam, it's all about, the students, the better for, the student athletes and everything. This has nothing to do with what the SEC did with getting Oklahoma and Texas, right?
Of course not. No way. It's all about the student athletes and furthering their educational goals. And I don't know what a discipline was. It's nothing. They have no signed documentation. Mm-hmm. They have no real plans to schedule more games. They've got nothing. I mean, they've already drawn a letter from some attorneys who worked on the Alston case saying, hey, if you guys start to get into an alliance about player, like how they make money now off of their NIL rights, they're like, we're going to hammer you with some collusion. So like, they don't even have any signed paperwork and they're already getting threatened by lawyers, and like nothing. Like the first game that was announced after the alliance formed was LSU and USC in Las Vegas. Another good reason to go to Las Vegas. But that's not, LSU's not part of the alliance. I thought that was going to be part of what this thing was all about. So I don't know if USC went rogue or if they said, hey, you can still schedule these games until just no new games outside of the ones that you already have scheduled. Because I know like they're like, well, we're going to honor like all of our commitments that we already have, and those extend the way that scheduling works these days. There's games scheduled out for like 2035 already. So is that when it's going to start, this alliance? Like in reality, I don't know. Like what do you think? What, like, is that what you got too from that? Like, I just don't understand what's going on with the scheduling part of this.
I was a little concerned at first. Okay, so is the SEC not going to get to play any of these three conferences, and then boom, we see USC and LSU get scheduled. Like, okay, well that throws that out the window, and it just seemed like a lot of posturing. It just seemed like, okay, you're going to avoid the big thing. The reason you would not have done this if Oklahoma and Texas were not going to the SEC. If everybody stayed pat, you wouldn't be doing this. And then if it's all about making college athletics better, college football better, why isn't the remnants of the Big 12 involved in the alliance? And if this is about the SEC, I use the air quotes here, poaching, Oklahoma and Texas from there, you're going to do, to me, those three conferences are going to do the same thing. They're not going to say it right now, but I have a feeling they're going to go after what's left of the Big 12, when down the road, maybe not right now, but they're going to do it too. So, but it's kind of just all this. It's a react to me, in my opinion. It just feels like it's just a reaction to what the SEC just did.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Pac-12 released a statement today saying that they're not going to expand at this time, but it's just like, okay, but what does that mean? Like this year, next year?
Yeah.
Like it's because, we just saw, like, we don't know exactly when Texas and Oklahoma are going to be able to join the SEC. Like there's some talk that it could happen as soon as next year. There's some talk about 2023, but it seems like 2025 is the target date right now, but like things happen really quickly in college sports. So like, but with that, it's the Pac-12 says that they're not expanding now. Okay, but like once Texas and Oklahoma officially move to the SEC and there's teams up for grabs, do they make a run at a Kansas? Do they make a run at a Baylor or a Texas Tech or Oklahoma State or something like that? Like they're going to be out there, and like this. There's, again, like just like with the alliance, like it's just a bunch of statements. It's nothing legally binding. So like, let's say tomorrow Notre Dame was like, okay, we want to join a conference. Like how quickly do you think that breaks up the Big Ten and ACC's alliance? Like they're going to be going to war with each other to try to land Notre Dame because that's a big brand. So like this alliance is nothing. And like, it's just a lot of talk about, I don't understand. Like these three guys, like, did they really think that they weren't going to get torn apart on social media for saying it's a gentleman's agreement? Like what did they think was going to happen there?
And then my thing too is, say if one of those three commissioners have to step down, the new guy has nothing that he has to say. I don't have to do this alliance. I don't have to appear to any of this because there's no contract signed. There's no paperwork. There's nothing there. It's, like you said, a gentleman's agreement. So then if a new commissioner comes in, which I don't foresee, I mean, all those are pretty much new commissioners anyways, but I'm just saying in that scenario, who's to say a new guy comes in down the road years, if they're still doing this, he doesn't have to stay with the alliance. He can say, I'm getting out of here. I'm going to go do what the SEC's doing or something like that.
I think that there's a reason that, the two most experienced commissioners, and Greg Sankey and Bob Bowlesby, like weren't involved in this,
Yeah.
So, let the new guys have their little alliance, and Sankey will just keep doing what's best for the SEC. And, I think down the road too, it wouldn't be shocking to me to see a Notre Dame join the conference. It wouldn't be shocking to me to see Clemson and Florida State potentially. Like if that's the road that the SEC wants to go down, and if these first few years of Texas and Oklahoma just really look like they've made the SEC like the greatest conference even more so, then you'll have some of these schools. They're like, hey, like maybe we should go over there, especially these football powerhouses, or should be football powerhouses. So I just think that over the course of the next couple of decades, like there's a lot more change that could happen.
Yeah, just while we're kind of on the topic, just your thoughts. How quick do you think we do see Oklahoma and Texas in the SEC? I mean, I just feel like we're not going to wait that full contract that they have with the Big 12. I feel like it's going to be sooner than that. How soon do you think we see them in the conference?
If I had to pick right now, I would say 2023. I know there's some buzz for next year. I know there's some talk that they're going to – I mean, the commissioners and, like, everybody involved is saying, like, they're going to wait it out. But, like, let the lawyers hack away at it. I bet we can get it down to 2023. That's when I would bet. Yeah. But I want to run an idea by you here that I had on Twitter the other day. So there's the 8 Big 12 teams. So let's say the Pac-12 stays true and doesn't expand. And, the Big 10 doesn't take Kansas and Iowa State, and the ACC doesn't scoop up West Virginia. What if the SEC like absorbed the Big 12 and those 8 schools and created like a second tier division, and then those 8 teams play, and then at the end of the year the top 2 teams would like get promoted up to the SEC, and then like the bottom 2 teams in the SEC have to go down to the Big 12 or the SEC Junior or whatever you want to call it for football. I think that could be a really fun idea. I don't think it would ever happen, but I do think like that would make things really, really fun, and would give some of these schools that end up in the 8-team conference some motivation to actually play well to get back up into the big leagues.
Well, Vanderbilt would be completely out of the regular SEC from now on. That would be interesting. Kind of basically like they do in a European soccer.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's I think it would be entertaining. I know it's crazy, but I think we thought some of these other expansion and realignment things were pretty crazy when they happened too. So anything can happen.
Yeah, that's the thing about sports in general, but college athletics now, anything is possible. So that would be an interesting idea. I've heard people do say something like maybe like the group of 5 moving up. I've never heard, but that's a pretty cool idea that the remaining of the Big 12, and then I guess Texas A&M, if they got bad one year, they would really be upset if they had to go back down to the Big 12. We know they're probably still upset over Texas coming to the SEC. They're just going to be the good teammate. They're still being a good teammate right now about all that. Looking at this upcoming season with the SEC, and every year it seems like, okay, we're going to get Alabama in a second, but there's always who's going to be that team that can challenge them, and that's Georgia. I mean, Georgia's got all the talent. They've had the talent for years under Kirby, but just there's certain games when they play teams that are just as good as them, they've kind of stubbed their toe. Do you see this Georgia team coming into the season? Do you see them not just only as an SEC title contender that can maybe knock off Alabama, but also a team you see could winning a national championship?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the 2 things that you need in order to beat Alabama are a good, strong defense and some consistency at quarterback. And Georgia has both right now. It's just all about the injuries right now because, we don't know if or when George Pickens is going to come back. If he can't come back this year, or if he comes back and he's not the same dynamic player, like that hurts them, obviously. I know Jermaine Burton and Kyrus Jackson have been banged up. Ari Gilbert's away from the team right now. And, football aside, I just hope that whatever's going on with him, I hope that, he gets back to a good place, whether or not he ever returns to the football field. Then you have Darnell Washington, the big tight end, who's hurt. And those are just all receivers. There's a couple offensive linemen who are banged up. There's Tyke Smith, the big-time transfer from West Virginia. He's dealing with an injury now. And, like, you got to be 100% when you're going into Clemson. And they're not 100%. And, I don't know much about Clemson's fall camp. They keep a lot of these things pretty quiet. But, like, I think that they're better health-wise right now. I still think that Georgia can win that game, but like that's a tone-setting game. Like you win that game, national title aspirations are there. You lose that game, the path to the playoff is still there, but then, now you're talking about a situation where the pressure's on. You can't slip up in the SEC season. You pretty much have to beat Alabama in the SEC title game. And I just think that, the path is there for Georgia. If they beat Clemson in week 1, then you can run the table in the regular season, lose to Alabama in the SEC title game, still get into the playoff, and then have a shot potentially at a rematch. Or, like if your one loss is in the SEC title game to Alabama, you're still in the playoff. I don't think there's anybody who doubts that. So this is an important game. It's all about like how much margin of error are they going to have the rest of the year, and that's where, if they lose that game, then maybe they get tight playing the rest of the way, and you can't afford a loss to a Florida. You can't afford a loss to an Alabama in the SEC title game should you get there at that point. So week 1's really important. And like, I know some people are saying, well, yeah, they can get in with a loss. And it's like, yeah, they can, but you'd rather win that game for sure.
Yeah, and you kind of answered my next question, but, I have felt the Clemson game is the most important game of the season for Georgia because, look, Clemson loses that game, no disrespect. They play in the ACC, and they don't have North Carolina on their schedule.
Right.
So more than likely, they should. You never know what can happen. That's why they play the game, but they should run through that schedule, go undefeated, maybe meet North Carolina ACC title game, win that. You're in the playoff. You're in the playoff. For Georgia, I feel like there's just this a pressure on them. Of course, you haven't won a national title since 1980. And I feel like, to me, if Georgia loses that game, it will be very intriguing to see how they respond to it. Because will they look and say, oh, no, here we go again. We can't beat one of the better teams in the country. And then maybe they fall apart at some point during the season. Like that loss beats them twice. I think that's why, for me, and you can talk about it more if you want to, that this game just means so much more to Georgia than it does Clemson.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like you said, Clemson is going to run through the ACC. Like I don't think anybody has any doubts about that, and if they don't, then they're out of the playoff. But like, if they lose that game and run the table, but that's why there is so much more pressure on Georgia, because like you look around the rest of the country, people are expecting Oklahoma to be a powerhouse in the Big 12. So there's one playoff team there. They're expecting, if you get the SEC champion, let's say it's a team like Texas A&M or Alabama, whoever, your SEC champion is another team that's in the playoff. You have Ohio State that many think is going to run the table in the Big 10. So there's 3, and then Clemson, if they run the table like they're supposed to, there's 4. So like then in that case, Georgia loses the SEC championship game, and it's like, well, okay, well now you're on the outside looking in because we have 4 teams that might be at that elite level already, but you win that game and you're the one that beat Clemson, even if Clemson runs the table and you have one loss to an undefeated Alabama team, let's say. The committee is going to have to look long and hard to potentially take a one-loss runner-up in the SEC over the ACC champion. So, I mean, yeah, I agree with you. That's the most important game on Georgia's schedule by far.
And it just feels like they should. Obviously, they're the overwhelming favorite in the East because Florida should be taking a step back. I mean, you're still expecting to be good under Dan Mullen. Kentucky, if they get a passing game, just even a semblance of it, you just feel like with what they can do running the ball and defense, they should be good. And I like what Drinkwitz did in year 1 there at Missouri with Basilite coming back at quarterback and what they got there. When you look at the rest of the East, what sticks out to you, and especially with that, with that second spot, do you think it's Florida, or could Kentucky or Missouri rise up and maybe finish second in the East?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still going to take Florida in that second spot, but I do think you're right that they take a step back. But, I have some serious concerns about Kentucky. Like, Will Levis left a Penn State team that, wasn't exactly torching people last season offensively. So, I mean, they have a great running game. They have a great offensive line at Kentucky. Nobody's doubting that. But, everybody gives this defense a pass. The defense wasn't very good last year. And they lost a lot of key players. They lost Jamin Davis in the first round of the draft. They lost some other guys on that unit. And, looking around, they brought in the leading tackler from Ole Miss, but, think about that statement. The leading tackler from Ole Miss. It's like, okay, like somebody had to make some tackles on that team, I suppose.
That's true.
But I really think that people are overrating the Kentucky defense. So I think that Kentucky and Missouri are going to be battling it out for that number 3 spot, and either one of those teams has the potential to pull off an upset of Florida. But I think we're going to see which of those 2 teams is going to be the biggest challenger to Florida for the 2nd spot. And we'll find out pretty quick because Mizzou travels to Kentucky week 2, and I think that that's just an absolutely huge game for both of those teams, and one of the better sneaky good games of the SEC season.
Yeah, I was with you, and I was almost like we were thinking the same thing there. Because I was thinking about that Kentucky Missouri game. That's one of the more, probably not a lot of people will talk about it, right, especially on the national side of things. But it's going to be very pivotal because if Florida does finish second, that game could really determine who comes in third.
Yeah, and I think honestly, if CBS wasn't waiting until week 3 for they usually wait until week 3 for the SEC on CBS stuff. Mizzou Kentucky would have a good case to be that featured SEC afternoon game in week 2, and it's just a shame that we won't get to hear Brad Nessler and Gary Danielson on that one.
Well, I don't know where about you. For people, people, they don't like those 2.
Yep.
Especially, I see it a lot. I'm in the state of Alabama. I see it all the time. They think that Gary Danielson hates Alabama every single time. It's just, but that's
but fans of other schools think that Gary Danielson loves Alabama. And it's just so funny. Like, it's the same thing with Joe Buck. Everybody thinks that he hates their team and loves the opponent. It's just like, okay, he's just like, with Joe Buck, it's just like, okay, but like, you're used to your hometown broadcasters, and he's not as excited about your team as the hometown broadcasters, and he's maybe like more like up here for the other team, but like, he's just more level for both teams, whereas your hometown broadcasters are up here for the home team and down here for the away team. So it's just like I don't know. I think that Gary is, I think Gary's fine. I mean, I think that there are some times that he overstates some points throughout the game. And, but overall, I like that team. I mean, Brad Nessler's voice is just perfect for Saturday afternoons. And especially, those night games that they get to do on occasion, it just lends a little air of big timeness when that crew's on, I think. So, but hey, I mean, the SEC on CBS is going away in a couple years, so we don't have to stick around with Gary for too much longer.
I'm going to miss the music. I'm going to miss the intro.
Definitely.
I think the trade-off should be ESPN should have to rebrand the 11 o'clock game to the JP Sports game. That just needs to be the transition over.
Yeah, I mean, bring that one back for sure.
The three Daves. Looking over at the West, and of course, you got to start with Alabama. And of course, and we say this every year. They lost a lot, but we know they're talented. Bryce Young at quarterback. You lose Devontae Smith. You lose most of your offensive line. You lose Najee Harris, but we know the talent's there. Defensively, I'm actually very excited to watch Alabama play defense. I think that defense is could be one of the best Nick Saban's had. When you look at Alabama, how far away are they from the rest of the West? I mean, do you see Texas A&M? I know a lot of people like Texas A&M coming in this year, and with Haynes King, the new quarterback. I know they got some offensive line issues there as well. Do you see them as a team that could potentially knock off Alabama, or you just see them that there's just a gap between Alabama and the rest of the West?
I think it'll be a closer game than it was last year, just because it's in College Station this time, I believe. But yeah, it just is tough timing for Jimbo Fisher and the Aggies, because I think, if they still had those maroon goons up front there, and they still have Kenyon Green, who's going to be a first round pick, in my opinion. But, just rebuilding the rest of that offensive front, like, that's going to be tough. You still have Anais Smith, you still have Isaiah Spiller. So you still got some playmakers there. But Haynes King, he's going to have to hit the ground running, because that there's some tough games on the schedule. Texas A&M makes a trip to Colorado to play in Denver in either week 2 or week 3. I forget which one, but that's not an easy game for a team that has a new quarterback. I mean, I think that the Aggies defense will be fine, but like, I agree with you that Alabama's could be special. I don't think it'll be like one of the best statistically that Nick Saban has ever had at Alabama, but like that's not where we're at in the game of football these days. Like I think that it'll be a top 5 defense in the country this year, but like I think if you stack it up to like 2009, 2011, those were just better defenses. But it is also, you know, in part because they were playing against SEC ground and pound style because the spread offense hadn't taken hold yet quite as much. So, you know, giving up 25 points a game like isn't terrible now, especially if your offense is scoring 40 points a game. You know, that's a trade-off you take. So you can still be really good. I mean, I don't think Alabama's going to allow anywhere close to 25 points. I think they'll be in like the 15, 16 range, but that's still going to be really good, you know, in today's era of open offenses and high tempo and fast pace, you know. So I think that Alabama has the right players in place. You know, Malachi Moore, Josh Jobe in the secondary. You know, you got Will Anderson, Christian Harris, Henry To'oTo'o in the linebacking core. That's going to be a really good group. And then you got some pass rushers and some defensive linemen who can stuff around. Like that's a loaded unit. And you know, I just think that that's going to carry the team the first couple weeks. And, you know, it's just unfortunate for these teams that we look at Alabama's schedule. Okay, well, week 3 at Florida, like that looks like a tough game. It's like, okay, but Florida has a new starting quarterback. And then you look at Texas A&M, it's like, okay, but Texas A&M also has a new starting quarterback. So, like, if either of those teams returned their starter from last year, maybe I'd be a little more confident in them. But I don't see it. I mean, I honestly think that that LSU has more of a shot of pulling off that one game upset because they have, you know, Max Johnson. He's not a veteran by any means, but he had a connection with Keyshawn Boutte at the end of last year. And like, I think that LSU's offense is going to be a lot better than people give it credit for. So, I mean, that's the game that like, I think if Alabama was going to lose a game, maybe it would be that one, but I just see them still as a step ahead of the rest of the West.
You know, when you look at the coaches around the conference, the new coaches, of course, you got Brian Harsin at Auburn, Shane Beamer at South Carolina, Heupel there at Tennessee, and Hartley there at Vanderbilt. Which of the guys do you feel like is set up to be most successful in year one? I mean, I'm sure you could say Harsin because Auburn probably has the most talent of those 4. But when you look at those 4 coaches, anything stick out to you and who you expected to see kind of rise their program in the first year?
Yeah, I think that Harsin, like you said, Auburn has the most talent of any of those groups. I think that the future is the brightest for Beamer at South Carolina, just because South Carolina has some new facilities that they're going to show off. He's already, you know, made some strides on the recruiting trails. Brian Harsin has very much not done that yet. Like he's gotten a couple good players, but you know, Auburn's classes have been lacking here, and the recruiting's a little slow compared to what it has been. Whereas, you know, Beamer started out pretty slow, but now that things are opened up and he can have recruits into that new facility, you know, they're skyrocketing up the rankings. And so I think that the future is bright for Shane Beamer in South Carolina. This year is going to be real rough, though. You know, with Heupel, it's the same situation that he's faced in his career. It's how much is his offense going to hurt his defense? Because you know they're going to put up points. Heupel's offenses at Missouri did that. His offenses at UCF did that. But against SEC competition, like that Tennessee defense was rated by the portal this year. They don't have a lot of strong players left on that side of the ball. So I see them scoring a lot of points this year, but I see them giving up even more, kind of like an even worse version of 2020 Ole Miss. So, you know, I think that they'll have some struggles. So if I had to pick the one to have the most wins in their debut, I'd still pick Harsin just because he has a quarterback coming back. He's got a competent OC and Mike Bobo, and Tank Bigsby is really good, perhaps the best running back in the SEC. And he's got some dogs on defense. He's got Smoke Monday. He's got Roger McCreary. He's got Zacoby McClain. He's got Owen Papo and Chandler Wooten. So that's a really strong linebacking core right there, and some good players in the secondary. So, you know, I think that Harsin gets the most wins of any of these first-year coaches for sure.
And on my last question, and I think I've probably kept you a little bit longer than I said I was, but is there a team in SEC? I'm not saying necessarily a team that will rise up and win the conference, but a team that maybe no one's talking about a lot going into the season you think could get some surprise wins and have a kind of a surprise successful season?
Yeah, I'll give you two, I mean, I'll play Homer a little bit and say my Missouri Tigers. I think that having Connor Bazelak and getting him a full offseason in Drinkwitz's offense, I think that's going to help. I think that now that Drinkwitz knows the players and what he can expect from them, I think that they'll have a bigger year on that side of the ball. They return a lot of offensive line talent. Defensively, they have some star power. They've played the transfer portal well. They have Trajan Jeffcoat, who was a first-team All-SEC defensive end last year. So they have talent. They just don't have a lot of depth on that side of the ball. But if they can stay healthy on defense, I think that they could rise as high as second place in the East. And, if they beat Kentucky in week 2, the floor for them is third place, I think. So, Mizzou in the East. And, like I said earlier, I like what LSU's got going on in the West. I know that's not exactly like a sleeper pick or anything since they just won a title 2 years ago. But, after last year, I think that they bounced back in a big way. I really don't think that people are putting enough attention on Eli Ricks. We hear Derek Stingley Jr. talked about a lot, but Eli Ricks, I think, has every opportunity to be just as good. He's not draft eligible after this year. So Derek Stingley's probably going to be a top 10 pick, but Ricks should be right there behind him in 2023.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to LSU. I think they're going to be a team that's going to be a lot more dangerous than I think people are thinking after, because of what happened last year going into this year. I think they'll be a much better team than they were last year. And it's here, obviously, when people listen to this, it is the week of the SEC getting kicked off. And Adam, I do appreciate you coming on the show, the preview, the upcoming SEC football season. And if the listeners and the viewers want to follow you online, where can they find you and all your work you're doing over there at Saturday Down South?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at AdamSpencer4, and you can sign up for our 3 times a week newsletter at Saturday Football. I think you go to Saturday.football in your browser, and it'll take you to the sign up email, and it will have some good stuff coming this season.
All right, sounds good, Adam. And again, I appreciate the time, and I look forward to talking again sometime down the road.
Definitely.
Everybody, thanks again to Adam Spencer for coming on the show this week as we got things going back with Talking SEC this week. Really excited to do it. It's just fun just saying welcome to Talking SEC. And as we're going to get out of here real quickly, I'm going to go over my predictions for the SEC for the upcoming season. And a lot of interesting things going to be going on with this conference. A lot of new quarterbacks. That's going to be a big storyline. And you can check out Brandon Eisman, a good friend of the show. He put up we all did over at Last Word College Football. We did our rankings positions in the SEC, and you can check out his rankings for the quarterbacks and many other great writers over Last Word as well. Myself, I had the tight ends. But let's look at SEC West real quick, and I want us to look at from 1 to 7 and do this real quickly. It's not going to be a long drawn out thing here. I got Alabama winning the West. I think you kind of could pick up on that one conversation with Adam there. I just think Alabama's the best team in the West. I mean, yes, I know new quarterback Bryce Young, Najee Harris is gone, Devontae Smith's gone, Jalen Waddle's gone. You lose a bulk of your offensive line, but for me, it's just Nick Saban. That's why you put Alabama number 1. He has the benefit of the doubt, in my opinion. You can't question him year in, year out. This program replaces different guys on the team, and he's still able to come in next year and reload. And I'm really, really intrigued by this Alabama defense. I mean, you're starting off up front. You got LeBron Ray, DJ Dell up there, like I said, up front. And then the linebackers. I mean, this may be the best linebacking core in all of college football. I mean, the SEC, show me one that's better. You have Christopher Allen, Christian Harris, Henry Toto, Will Anderson, and secondary to be good. This defense is going to be really good this year. And they open with Miami. And I don't think Alabama covers or wins by the 19.5 points. I think they win more by between 10 to 14. But defensively is where it's going to be at. I think they're going to try to figure some stuff out offensively, especially Bill O'Brien, the offensive coordinator. But I like Alabama, and particularly the defense will carry this team the first half of the year. And then the second half of the year, I think the offense will pick up and be what we're kind of used to. I mean, they're not going to put up the numbers they did with Mac Jones. No, they're not going to do that. But the offense will get much, much better. And Bryce Young will show a lot of development, I think, as well. And I don't think this year people get them. And Obviously, them number one. I don't think Texas A&M gets them. And I think Alabama runs through their regular season schedule undefeated. Now, I do have Texas A&M finishing at number 2. They were 9-1 last year. If you beat Alabama, you were in the playoff, but they were very close. They were 5th. New quarterback, Haynes King replacing Kellen Mond, one of the 5 offensive linemen return, and that's where I don't think they are going to finish first. I'll finish second. And look, Alabama's got the same deal, but once again, that benefit of doubt thing with Nick Saban versus Jimbo Fisher. They should be loaded on defense once again. They were the second against the run last year, and you have running back Isaiah Spiller, so that's a good centerpiece, obviously, offensively. A&M is going to be a really good team this year. So I don't want people to think I'm just saying they're not going to be good at all. I think they're going to be really good. I just don't think they're going to be on the level of Alabama quite yet. I do like LSU at 3. You heard Adam there. That's one of his surprise teams. I think LSU rebounds, this year. I do believe they go 9-3 on their schedule and sets up for 2022, where I think they will be a national title contender, potentially a national championship team. Defense should be a lot better. They can't be any worse than what they were in the Bo Pelini. I really like what I saw out of Max Johnson against Florida and Ole Miss, which I know those were not great defenses last season. I know that. And you just have to like what he did for them. And I really like the way kind of LSU salvaged their season. They were 3-5. It was really not good. I mean, obviously. But going into this year, like I said, I believe this team is a 9-3 team at the end of the year, potential to get that 10th win in the bowl game. And then that will give the program and this team a lot of momentum going into the 2022 season. I like Auburn at number 4. Now, this is a spot where everybody wants to put Ole Miss at. I like Auburn here. We'll see what the development will be with Bo Nix under Harsin and Bobo. Tank Bixby at running back. If they can get that offensive line working good enough where he can find space. Of course, you got Sean Shivers there at running back as well. I will say I am worried about Auburn at wide receiver. A lot of just unproven players there. They got to step up. But Tank Bixby on the offensive side, running the ball, and defensively I really like. I think defensive tackle I'm kind of interested to see. Tyron Truesdale has left the program. He's now going to Florida with Daquan Newkirk as well, went to Florida too as well during the offseason. They should be good at defensive end on the edges, getting after the passer with Colby Wooden and Derek Hall. You should be good at linebacker once again with Owen Papo and Jacoby McClain. Those are 2 good ones there. You got Roger McCurry at corner, and you got Smoke Monday in the secondary. Auburn's got a good group on defense. They should be one of the better defensive teams in the conference. And another thing, Derek Mason's defensive coordinator. He's done great things when he was at Stanford's DC. And Vanderbilt had some very disciplined defenses. I mean, I know they had talent gap, obviously, when they were at Vanderbilt. That was a big issue for them. But you can't say they were badly coached all the time at Vanderbilt, and I do think he's going to do well as defensive coordinator there. I will put Ole Miss at 5. Matt Corral is going to put up Heisman numbers. He won't get consideration for the Heisman because you have to be on a good team or a title contending team, it seems now, if you're going to be up for the Heisman, especially at the quarterback position. But he's going to put up numbers in Lane Kiffin offense. I just still have questions about this defense. I think Ole Miss is going to have to win a lot of high-scoring games. And defensively, I just don't think they're there. They'll be a good team. They'll be a fun team to watch, but they're just not the 4th or 3rd team. I think some people are putting them in the SEC West. Now I got Arkansas at 6. Texas game is big. They win that. That gives you so much momentum for the year. KJ Jefferson at quarterback replacing Felipe Franks. He really showed out against Missouri last year, put up some big numbers there. And this team has weapons, and they have good players on offense at running back, receiver, defense. Like I said, this is a tougher team. This is not the same Arkansas team that they were with Chad Morris. So I really like what Arkansas is doing. I got Mississippi State finishing last. I don't think they go to a bowl game once again under Mike Leach. I think the offense is going to struggle again. Just how patient will they be there in Starkville with Mike Leach is going to be very, very interesting to me. So we'll see what happens there. But I don't think they do well, and I don't think they should get rid of Mike Leach if it's another bad year. But year 3 is going to be a very, very interesting one, to say the least, for Mississippi State. And I'll let everybody know y'all just see my notes right in front of the screen. So a little first video of talking SEC, really first video show. So bear with me as I kind of get everything set up there. Anyways, in the SEC East, I like Georgia, obviously. I think Georgia wins the conference this year. I think Georgia goes undefeated. And I'll get to my playoff picks here in a second. JT Daniels played really well the last 4 games. I know people going to say, look at the competition. Just things were different with him at quarterback. So you got to like what you see there. Running backs, you got Jameer White and James Cook. I think the best running back duo in the entire conference. The defense is going to be great. They're going to continue what they've been doing. But the Clemson game is the pivotal game. If they win that game, that sets them up for the rest of the year. But as I was talking there to Adam, I do wonder if they lose this game, will that dictate some things that happen to them later on? If they lose to Clemson in the opener on Saturday, which I think Georgia will win, but if they lose that game, will that loss beat them twice? They can't let that happen if it does. There's so much pressure on Georgia. Like I said, so much expectation. Will they fall apart? We'll see. And when they have played teams at their talent level, they have not played as well. Alabama, LSU. We've seen this in the past. So we'll see what happens. But I do like Georgia to win the East and go to Atlanta. Florida finished second. And this is going to be a lot closer at second than I think some people may realize. Emory Jones at quarterback, I just think improved the running game. Florida has not been a good running team in the last couple of years with Kyle Trask at quarterback. They've had to put a lot on him. Improved running game will help, but defensively, where they're going to be at, they can't be as bad as they were defensively and hope to have the same success when it comes to wins and losses. Because their defense is just as bad as it was last year. They're going to lose more games than they did last year. Kentucky at number 3, love their running back duo. If White and Cook at Georgia are not the best, then we may have to make an argument for Christopher Rodriguez and Kavase Smoke. Those two are tremendous, especially Rodriguez. They have talent all over the place on all 3 levels of the defense. Where will the pass game? Will the pass game improve? If this improves, and if it's a great improvement, they are going to give Florida a run for their money for the second spot in the SEC East. Will Levis coming from Penn State, and then you got offense coordinator Liam Cohen, who's coming from the Rams. Will he be implementing the Rams offense? So if Kentucky just gets a semblance of a passing game that's half better or twice as good as what they've been doing the last couple of years, Kentucky should be all right. Missouri at 4, but their week 2 matchup with Kentucky is going to be huge because that could dictate who finishes third. Heck, who even knows? That can dictate who finishes second in this division. Went 5-3 after starting 0-2 last year. The first 2 losses were to Alabama and Tennessee. I mean, that's about the best moment Tennessee had last year, other than Pruitt being fired. I guess that would probably be the highlight of Tennessee fans' season last year. Quarterback Connor Bays, like 4 or 5 offensive linemen return. Like I said, the week 2 matchup, Kentucky, they've got a lot of guys coming back on this defense. It should be solid. They've got some good pass rushers, so they can get after the quarterback there at Missouri. I got them 4th, but that game with Kentucky is going to be huge. I mean, that's a tie between 3 and 4 and even 2 for me. And then to wrap up the rest of the SEC East, I got South Carolina finishing 5th, Tennessee at 6th. I'm just not big on the Josh Heupel hire, and Vanderbilt's going to finish 7th. Just a lot of work there to do for Clark Lee to get Vanderbilt headed in the right direction if they want to get them to a bowl game and competing just for get to a bowl game. But that's going to be a process for them, so they're going to need to be patient with Clark Lee there in Vanderbilt. And then finally, I guess I'll give my who's going to win the conference and all the other leagues. I'll just go ahead and throw it out. ACC, obviously, is Clemson. North Carolina's number 2 there. Probably put Miami at 3. The Big Ten, I think Ohio State wins. I'm not sold on them being a playoff team this season. Big 12, I like Oklahoma, but they're going to beat Iowa State twice. Those are the 2 teams in that conference. The only 2 title contenders, in my opinion, in that conference, and they're going to play each other twice. I just feel that's going to happen. Out in the Pac-12, I'm going to go with USC. USC and Oregon be your teams there. Oregon will be really good again with Cristobal. And then Keaton Slovis, obviously quarterback there at USC. Let's go with Oregon. We're on the fly here on the podcast. I will say Oregon wins the Pac-12 this year. So who's going to be my 4 playoff teams? I will say the SEC gets 2. I think Georgia goes undefeated. They win the SEC, but they win a close SEC title game against Alabama. I like Oklahoma getting into the playoff in Clemson. Then I do think Clemson will beat Alabama in the semifinal. And then you'll see an Oklahoma-Georgia matchup in the semifinal. Oklahoma will play Clemson in the national championship. I had actually told people I thought Georgia would win the title, but the more I think about it, I think it's going to be Oklahoma versus Clemson. There will not be an SEC team in a national title game. I think Oklahoma wins the national championship this year behind the arm of Spencer Rattler. And what I believe will be a much, much improved defense at Oklahoma. The defense was actually solid last year for them, and it will be even better this year with Lincoln Riley. And Lincoln Riley gets that national title, and Oklahoma wins it. So I know this is an SEC show, and instead of my hurt some people's feelings, but I do believe Oklahoma wins the national title this season. And that's going to do it for this edition Talking SEC. We'll give you all a heads up. You may be seeing some bonus pods or some special pods called Talking College Football from time to time in the feed where we will venture outside the SEC. But I will be back next week. Don't know who my guest is going to be, but we will recap what is going to be a very, very busy weekend of college football and get it all broke down. And we'll be back on the podcast next week. Hope everybody has a great weekend, a holiday weekend. College football is here. The college football season here. It is the best time of the year. Remember, you can follow me on social media at PJordanSEC. The podcast is on Twitter at Talking SEC Pod. You can find a podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, subscribe, rate, and review. Leave a review. I will read it on a future edition of the show. And remember, you can always email me at sportstalkphillipjordan@gmail.com. Until next week, bye-bye.